I always admired Chicago because it always felt like the city had the same passion as like New York did when it came to sports and Philadelphia. So when you look at the Cubs, boy, the White Sox are a mess. The Blackhawks, the Bears. Yeah, like I know it's hard for you to distill every Chicago sports fan, but like where do you think the city sort of sits right now? Because it's kind of they're in a kind of a weird place in that um there's not a team, they don't have like the Eagles or there's not a team in the market right now where it's like, let's all revolve our energy around this team because they have a real chance to win. There's no team like that now, right?
Well, the Cubs might be, depends on the free agent market. They're certainly in an Ohtani, but the question is, does he want to come to Chicago? They're willing to pay. If they fill the right holes, then they're a team you can cheer for in a way.
Yeah.
But this is probably, it's not the worst year that I've been around. 1980 was the worst year. I mean, the Blackhawks were good that year, and the other four teams were awful. Here, the White Sox are awful. The Bulls are awful. The Bears are awful. The Cubs they have the arrow moving up. In the case of the Blackhawks, awful, yes, but they do have Connor Bedard. So the only team really, other than the Blackhawks, where fans are wanting to come out to see Bedard play, will be the Cubs, depending on what their offseason is. Look, they went out and spent $40 million to get Craig Counsell as a manager. So obviously, they're going to try to supply him with what they can get in the open market or in a trade.
John, one follow up, and then I'll let you go because I know we want to get into Counsell. Does the fandom in the city like bleed into University of Michigan? Like, do they adopt that team because they are obviously a team that can win a national championship, or is it just a little too far away?
Notre Dame. It's Notre Dame, isn't it?
Notre Dame. Northwestern.
Yeah, it would be Notre Dame. Northwestern has almost no following. If they're good, even this year, after all the controversy, Braun's probably going to be named, the Big Ten Coach of the Year. But their college football isn't big here. College basketball isn't until the tournament. If Northwestern makes it, everybody, says, okay, let's go. Yeah, football would be Notre Dame. Yeah.
Yeah. So you touched on Craig Counsell. How surprised were you when the name was revealed as the Cubs manager? Particularly, I think a lot of people thought that Ross did a pretty good job.
Stunned, like everybody else, because everybody thought he was going to the Mets. This happened so fast. Look, he's considered one of the best managers in the game, albeit, they have trouble getting out of the first round of the playoffs. They're a very good regular season team. In the playoffs, they have failed. Then again, look at Major League Baseball, and you see 4 straight years that you've got a wild card team, winning the World Series or in the World Series. But it's a bold move. It's a bold stroke. Was Ross good? Yeah, he was a good communicator. I think that what they saw was the same thing that Theo Epstein saw and Jed when they hired Joe Maddon. He was available. He was there for the taking. And they said, you know what? We're gonna gamble on this guy because we think he can change the culture. And I think that's exactly. I don't know about culture so much. They just think that Counsell is one of the smartest guys in the game. Again, you're going to have to surround him with the right players to win. But I think they looked at it and said, you know what? The iron's hot. This is an organization, remember, that had as managers Dusty Baker, Lou Piniella, Joe Maddon, and now Craig Counsell. They've been bold.
And how much of a change do you think there'll be in the lineup? I mean, are they looking at major overhaul?
Well, I wouldn't call it an overhaul. They won 83 games last year. They should have really made the playoffs. They were a couple of games away. They faded down the stretch. Will Bellinger sign here? I don't know. He's getting a major league bad rap now for his velocity, swing velocity. Will Ohtani come here? They made a tremendous presentation to him in 2017. He was impressed, albeit there was no DH in the league. Now there's a universal DH. Depends on where he wants to go. Otherwise, they can go for Rhys Hopkins, who's again another pillow contract. They probably need to get a number 2 or even number 1 starting pitcher. since Stroman is gone. Good, because they overpaid him. So they're close, but it just depends on what Hoyer can do in the offseason. He will be active. There's no question about it. They are willing to spend money again.
Yeah, I would love to see Ohtani there. I just think it would be such a fascinating, historic franchise, transcendent player. They can pay him. The one thing, and again, obviously, I'm not a baseball reporter, so there's no inside knowledge. Just from 10,000 feet above. He has always seemed to indicate to me, George, that he wants to play on one of the coasts, and most likely the West Coast. So I think just in terms of like kind of culture, geography, and living, I think they're a long shot, even if they offer the most money. I would love to see it, but if I was the Cubs, I wouldn't bank on it. Do you, when we go across town, you see any light at the end of the tunnel for the White Sox?
Well, it's a disaster. You'd think it can't get worse, and then Jason Benetti bolts town.
Yes,
Detroit.
the most popular White Sox leaves.
Extremely popular, and what happened was, White Sox said, we want you to do more games here and not honor your network contract. And he said, get me out of this contract so I can go somewhere. Listen, I talked to Jason Benetti several times. He was never going to stay put in one place that long, even if the White Sox treated him with royalty. He's the type of guy to keep moving forward and forward. As far as the franchise goes, as bad as the American League Central is, they should finish last next year. They have no pitching. They have players that they're probably going to trade. Dylan Cease, because he's got 2 years left before he becomes a free agent. And the White Sox are notorious, Jerry Reinsdorf is, in not paying pitchers long-term contracts. I understand that. I get that. Sometimes you have an exception. They have Yohan Moncada is the last year of a contract, paying him $24 million. They need an overhaul again, after doing it once, in which Rick Hahn did a fairly good job, but those players just didn't do what they were supposed to do. There was a failure in that as well. So it looks very, very bleak. The public relations is absolutely awful on the south side of Chicago. It's just brutal.
We should point out that Jason Benetti is the television play-by-play voice of the White Sox, or was, and jumped to the Detroit Tigers to great aplomb in Detroit. They made that announcement, and they did it over a 3-day period that made it sound like they were signing up, their starting pitcher. So the Tigers needed this a little bit of a bolstering that way as well. So, and he will do a good job. He's going to be alongside our buddy Ken Daniels, who's the voice of the Red Wings, and has been for so many years. So they're trying to do some new and different things and better things in Detroit at this point. The other Jerry Reinsdorf team, George, and we saw some frustration last week when DeMar DeRozan, who is very popular in Toronto, came out after the game against the Raptors and admitted he was frustrated, admitted he was disappointed with what's going on with the Bulls. Wasn't there a time in the last 18 months that we thought that the Bulls were on the cusp of getting back to some rather regular winning, and this seems to have just fallen apart?
I said when they made the trade for Vucevic that it was a major gamble to give up 2 first-round picks. But when they got Lonzo Ball, a guy who had been injured twice, had already been with 2 teams, was not a good three-point shooter. I said, this is a franchise that's good enough not to be good enough. Now, Ball started to prove everybody wrong. He started making three-pointers. They were leading the East, and then he went down with an injury that I knew not long after that he probably would never be able to play again. But the worst part of all of this is Arturas Karnisovas, who's the vice president, and he really picks out all these players, decided to stand pat this year with a team that didn't make the playoffs last year, that everybody knew wasn't going to be good enough. And now here they're off to a horrible start, and it's going to be who wants this guy and who wants this guy. Zach LaVine still has 4 years left and a mega contract. They're going to find a way to trade him. DeMar DeRozan probably by the trading deadline will be gone. This is a franchise that made enormous mistakes, particularly a first-round pick that's been a bust in Williams. So the arrow is pointing way down. Yep, the Reinsdorfs are not batting 1,000 in this city, probably like 0.50.